For years, they said she just disappeared. No one asked why. Then came the storm, and one by one, people started saying her name again. Anna Whitmore used to leave her porch light on every night. Not because she feared the dark, she'd walked through enough of it already, but because her son, Matthew, never remembered his house key. He liked seeing the light when he came home, from late basketball practice or his shift at the diner. It meant she was up, that home was still warm, that someone was waiting. Their cabin sat at the edge of Ashbury Ridge, where the pine trees grew thick and the winters came early. The place wasn't fancy, just one floor, a sagging porch, and a wood-burning stove that never quite heated the corners. But it was theirs, and for Anna, that had always been enough. She filled her days in ways that looked simple but ran deep. Tuesdays were food pantry at the church. Wednesdays, she checked in on the McAllister's boy after school. Sunday mornings, she taught Bible stories to a room full of children with sticky fingers and open hearts. People in Ashbury Ridge trusted her without question. Some said she had that kind of strength, the soft kind, the kind that never asked to be noticed. When her husband passed years earlier, she stayed steady, wore his old flannel coat in the winter, and whispered prayers at night. But it was Matthew who kept her anchored. He was her only child, the last ember of something whole. He had his father's shoulders and her way of listening without interrupting. At 17, he still called her Mama. He kissed her cheek the night he died. The snow started just after dinner. Light at first, almost gentle. Matthew had volunteered to help set up the Christmas nativity downtown, a tradition he loved more than most. The town square would be lit, with garlands, hot cider, carolers. Anna had offered to drive him. He'd said no, he wanted her to stay warm. He'd be back in an hour. He never made it. They said it was the curve on Old County 9, black ice, maybe a deer, maybe the brakes. No one really knew. They only knew that the truck rolled, that the windshield gave way, that the snow covered his body before they found it. Anna kept the porch light on for 23 days, even after the funeral. Even after the cards and flowers stopped coming. Even after people in town began talking in low, quiet voices that never reached her directly. They said she should have stopped him from going. They said he looked tired, that she should have known better. Someone, no one ever confessed who, said maybe it was God's will. Maybe the Lord was testing her faith. But Anna knew something had snapped that night, and it wasn't just her heart. It was the thread between her and the town she had served, fed, prayed over, the one that suddenly didn't know what to say to her. No one came to refill her pantry shift. No one asked about Sunday school. They called it space, called it respect, but really they had just turned away, slowly, collectively. Anna turned away too. She packed up Matthew's room with hands that didn't tremble. Kept only a few things, a watch, a Bible he'd won in Sunday school, and a photo of him hugging a golden puppy. The dog was long gone, but the way her son had loved it, had loved deeply and without shame, that stayed with her. One morning in late February, she loaded the last of her boxes into an old Ford pickup, shut the door to the house she'd poured her life into, and drove north. No note, no goodbye. She kept driving until Ashbury Ridge disappeared behind frost-streaked glass, until even the radio gave out, until the road turned to gravel, until she found a place where the silence didn't feel cruel. It just felt honest. Edgewood Hollow. That was the name carved into the old wooden post outside the cabin. If it had belonged to someone else, they'd long since given it up. The structure was tired. Wood split, roof sagging, porch half collapsed. But it sat beneath a stand of evergreens, hidden from the road, wrapped in snow and wind. It was exactly what she needed. No one came looking for her, and for a while, that was a relief. The days passed like fog. She fixed what she could, patched the roof with tarps, got the stove working, hung quilts over windows. She spoke only to the wind. Until one afternoon, a golden blur moved between the trees. Roscoe. At first, he wouldn't come close, just watched her from the edge of the tree line, ragged, limping, ribs showing. But something in his eyes, deep, amber, stubborn, made her kneel down in the snow and whisper, "You're not the only one who lost everything." He came closer the next day. Then, inside the cabin, then he never left. Over time, more dogs came, wounded, abandoned, cold. She took them in without question. Gave them space, gave them food, gave them names. Scout, a wiry mutt with mismatched eyes. Junie, shy and scarred. Buck, deaf but loyal. She didn't call it a rescue. She never posted signs or told anyone. She didn't need to be thanked. She needed something to stay alive for. Roscoe was the leader, always within a few feet of her. He slept beside the fire but sprang to his feet the moment she moved. He'd place his head on her knee when she sat too long in silence. He responded to hand signals, led the others through snowdrifts and wooded trails. He was calm when the storms came, strong when she wasn't. Sometimes Anna would whisper, "You're doing better than I am." Sometimes she believed it. She trained, then without thinking, left gloves hidden in the trees, gave whistle commands in the wind. They learned, they followed, they waited. She stopped praying, not out of anger, but because she could no longer bear the quiet between each word. Instead, she lit a candle every night and placed it in the front window. One small light in the dark, not for Matthew, not for the town, not even for God, just for the light. And Ashbury Ridge, it carried on. The diner reopened with new owners. A younger pastor led Christmas Eve services. People talked about Anna like she'd never existed, or like she'd died, and no one knew what to do with her memory. They didn't know about the dogs. They didn't know about the trail she kept shoveled through the woods or the crates of emergency blankets by her door. They didn't know she still watched the ridge from her porch some nights, wondering if the town ever thought of her at all. They didn't know she left the porch light on again, just once a year on Christmas Eve, just in case the world decided to remember. The first winter in Edgewood Hollow was brutal. Snow piled high against the cabin windows, wind screamed through the eaves at night, and the woodpile she thought would last through February was gone by mid-January. But Anna endured. She always had. And when she couldn't, Roscoe would curl against her legs by the fire and remind her what warmth felt like. She stopped marking the calendar after that first year. Days blurred into routines. Wake, feed the dogs, haul water, chop wood, check the trails. She said little even to the animals, but they seemed to understand. Roscoe most of all. He became her shadow. When she went outside to fix the fencing or gather fallen limbs after a storm, he moved just behind her heel. Never barking, never tugging, just present, loyal, watching her like she was the thing that needed saving. By their second winter together, Roscoe had taken command of the entire pack. Junie followed his lead. Scout, always nervous, only ventured out when Roscoe did. Even Buck, who couldn't hear Anna's voice, would respond to a flick of Roscoe's tail. Anna never intended to train a rescue team. It just happened. One day she'd slipped on a patch of ice deep in the woods. The fall wasn't terrible, but her ankle gave out beneath her with a sharp crack. Pain shot through her leg, her breath fogging the air in short bursts. No one would hear her scream out here. No one knew where she lived. But Roscoe had turned, come running back, and stood over her with those deep, worried eyes. He nuzzled her shoulder once, then disappeared into the trees. She thought she'd lost him. Thought she'd die there, surrounded by pines and silence. Minutes later, he returned, with Scout and Junie dragging the emergency sled Anna kept by the back shed. She had trained them to respond to whistle patterns for distance drills. She'd never imagined they'd use it on her. That night back at the cabin, Roscoe lay beside her cot and didn't sleep. His eyes stayed fixed on her, as if daring the pain to come back and try again. Anna didn't cry often, but she cried then. From that moment on, she knew. She wasn't lost anymore, but she wasn't found either. She was something in between. And that was enough to keep going. The winters rolled in and out. 3 passed. 4. Time softened the hard edges of grief, but never erased them. She stopped talking to God, stopped calling Matthew's name in her dreams. But every Christmas Eve, she lit the candle in the window, and Roscoe sat beside it like he understood exactly what it meant. Ashbury Ridge stayed quiet about her. They didn't reach out, didn't send cards, didn't drive past her trail. They had their own lives, new babies, high school championships, choir rehearsals. But guilt doesn't disappear. It settles, like snow on an old roof, and under enough weight, even the strongest beams start to creak. One spring, the town vet called. Said a stray dog had come in, limping, frostbitten, and was too wild to place. Said someone in town remembered Anna, that she used to take in the ones no one else would. Anna listened. Let the silence stretch. Then she said, "Bring him." That's how Toby came. Small, mean, all ribs and teeth. Roscoe didn't like him at first, but he tolerated him. By summer, Toby was sleeping curled into Roscoe's side like a child in his mother's lap. A year later, someone else called. A hiker had gone missing in the woods near Ridgeline Trail. Search crews couldn't get through the terrain. They needed dogs, trained ones. Someone mentioned the woman with the pack up north. No one said her name, just that she was quiet, but good. Anna didn't say yes, she didn't say anything. But that night she packed a crate with blankets, clipped headlamps to each collar, and loaded Roscoe into the truck. They found the hiker. By dawn, alive, frostbitten, confused but alive. When the rescue crew asked for her name, Anna just nodded toward Roscoe and said, "He's the one who found her." Word spread, slowly, carefully, like the town was afraid of waking something it had buried too deep. But they remembered. They always had. They just didn't know what to do with that memory. Back at Edgewood Hollow, Anna kept her world small. The cabin stayed warm. The trails stayed clear. The routines deepened. But the silence no longer stung. It settled around her like a worn coat. Sometimes at night, she would stand on the porch with Roscoe at her side and stare out toward the hills that led back to Ashbury Ridge. She'd trace the path in her mind. The diner, the post office, the church steps where Matthew once sang carols. Places that used to carry joy. Now they carried weight, not because they were gone, but because they still existed without her. She never expected them to change. Not for her. She had changed enough for all of them. One afternoon in early December, she walked past the cedar tree where she and Matthew used to hang bird feeders. She hadn't gone there in years. The ground was already hard with early frost. A crow watched from above as she knelt and brushed snow from the old roots. Roscoe sat nearby, watching, still as stone. And for a moment, Anna felt her son beside her again. Not in memory, but in presence. Not in the way people meant when they said, "He's always with you," but in the way that makes your lungs stop working and your knees forget how to hold you. She sat there for a long time. No tears, no prayers, just stillness. Roscoe eventually came and placed his head in her lap. She stroked his fur and whispered, "I still don't know what I believe." But for the first time in years, she didn't choke on the words. She just said them. And the sky didn't crack. The earth didn't shake. Only the wind moved, soft and cold. And Roscoe didn't move at all. Later that night, she pulled out Matthew's Bible from the trunk beneath her bed. The leather cover was cracked. The ribbon still marked Romans. She didn't open it, she just held it. The cabin was quiet, the dogs slept, and the candle in the window was already lit. Not out of tradition, not out of hope, but because deep down, something had begun to shift. Not forgiveness, not return, but readiness. The kind that comes just before a storm when the air holds its breath, and even the dogs start to listen harder than usual. In Ashbury Ridge, the storm didn't arrive with drama. It arrived with silence. No lightning, no crashing trees. Just snow, thick, slow, constant. As if the sky had decided to bury everything it remembered. By Christmas Eve morning, the town was already holding its breath. The clouds pressed low. The wind whispered across porches and wrapped itself around window frames. Church bells didn't ring. Children didn't play in the snow. Something had shifted. It had been forecasted for days, a major system moving in from the north. But people in Ashbury Ridge had heard warnings before. They salted their driveways, filled bathtubs just in case, and said things like, "We'll ride it out. We always do." But this storm didn't want to be ridden out. It wanted to stay. By noon, the sky was no longer gray, it was gone. The roads disappeared. Visibility dropped to a memory. Somewhere in town, a transformer blew and the last Christmas lights blinked out. Power failed. Then the phones. Then the heat. By 2 p.m., Ashbury Ridge was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the kind of cold that crept beneath skin, into lungs, into decisions. In the mayor's office above Main Street, Mayor Henry Thompson stood at the window in his long wool coat, one hand on a walkie-talkie, the other pressed flat to the frosted glass. A heavy-set black man nearing 60, he usually moved with authority, his voice deep and unshakable. But that afternoon, he looked small against the white. He pressed the button. "Township Dispatch, this is Mayor Thompson. Do we have any visibility? On the Ridge Road evac route?" Static, he tried again. "Dispatch, confirm status of backup generator at the school, over." Nothing. The clerk across the room didn't speak. She sat near a space heater that had long since gone cold, watching the battery light on the radio blink red. He let out a low breath. "We should have called her." The clerk didn't ask who. She didn't have to, because everyone in Ashbury Ridge had thought about Anna Whitmore at least once that week. Most more than once. They just hadn't said it aloud. That would mean admitting something the town wasn't ready to confess, that they had let go of the one person who had known what to do when no one else did, and now they were paying for it. In homes across town, families layered socks and coats. Grandparents clutched rosaries. Mothers lit candles and whispered to their children, "It's all right, sweetie. It's just a little storm." But it wasn't just a little storm. By 4:30 p.m., winds gusted over 60 miles per hour. Birch Lane was buried, Ridge Road impassable. People began abandoning cars on side roads and walking through waist-deep snow toward the church, the school, anywhere with light. Some didn't make it. A family of 4 from the East End huddled in their stalled minivan near the edge of the woods. The father's lips were blue. The baby had stopped crying. The mother wrapped her scarf tighter around her daughter's face and rocked her gently, the rhythm breaking only when the wind screamed. And then, through that wind, they heard it. Not an engine, not a siren, a bark, sharp, direct, familiar in a way that didn't make sense. Then came the light, 2 lanterns bouncing in the snow. The outline of a sled, harnesses, legs pounding across the drifts. And there, at the front of the team, a golden dog, eyes fixed, chest heaving, coat glowing like fire under frost. Behind him, a figure trudged forward, tall, wrapped in a thick coat, face shadowed beneath a wool hat, hand gripping the sled's frame. Anna. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She pulled the child from the mother's arms with a gentleness that had not dulled with time. Wrapped her in a fleece blanket, checked the baby's breath with gloved fingers, then nodded once and whistled low. Roscoe barked and turned. The team pivoted. The sled creaked into motion. Anna helped the parents up, one on each side, and just like that, they were gone, disappearing into the storm that had hidden everything else. By early evening, whispers spread across town. The storm was not letting up, but something or someone was moving through it. At the church, a teenager burst through the side doors yelling, she's out there with the dogs." At the school shelter, families stared at the door, listening for sleds, for pause, for breath that wasn't their own, and they came one by one. A woman from Pine Hollow collapsed at the entrance, her coat frozen solid, but her child was warm in her arms. A farmer from County 9 stumbled in with his elderly mother on a sled, wrapped in canvas and wool, over and over the same story. A woman in the snow, dogs, golden light, no words. The pastor lit every candle they had. Someone started boiling snow to keep the air humid enough for the children to breathe. And still, every time the door opened, people didn't ask, "Is help here?" They asked, "Is she back?" At the town square, a small crowd formed near the half-buried Christmas tree. The lights were out, the wreaths had fallen. The nativity scene was nothing but silhouettes under snow. But in the distance, just past the general store, through the wall of white, they saw her. Sleds. 3 of them now. Lanterns glowing. Dogs panting. Foam on their muzzles. Steam rising from their backs. And behind them, Anna Whitmore, walking like she had never left. Her face was red from windburn. Her coat soaked at the cuffs. Her hands wrapped in cloth. But her back was straight. Her eyes sharp. Her pace unwavering. Roscoe stood in front of her, chest heaving. Tail still. The people parted as she passed. No one reached out, no one dared speak. Mayor Thompson stood near the gazebo, his hat in his hands. His voice cracked when he tried to say her name. He didn't finish. Anna didn't look at him. She turned toward the school gym, toward warmth, toward the work that still needed doing. That night inside the shelter, she laid blankets over frozen feet. She poured broth into cracked lips. She cleaned wounds, tied rope, checked maps, kissed the top of a child's head without asking permission. Roscoe didn't rest, neither did she. The storm howled outside, but inside, something else stirred, something the town had forgotten how to name: grace. It didn't come with fanfare. It came on sled runners and wet boots and the quiet resolve of a woman who refused to let strangers die in the dark. Anna never said, "I forgive you." She didn't need to. She was already doing it. The storm didn't stop because Anna showed up, but something else did. The spiral of fear, the rising pitch of voices, the frantic running in circles, fell quiet the moment she entered the gym. She didn't speak. She moved. A boy with frostbite on his fingertips. She rubbed snow on the burns, wrapped them, told his sister to hold his hands between hers. A baby crying from the cold? She pulled a wool-lined sling from her pack and tucked him inside her coat. The mayor, still standing in the doorway like he needed a cue to step forward, she walked right past him. Roscoe stayed close at her heel, flanks rising and falling with exhaustion. His thick coat was crusted in ice, his paw pads split and raw. Still, he didn't sit. Anna knelt beside a woman in labor, early, frightened, trapped in a shelter with no doctor, and said, "I'll need boiled water, scissors, and something to tie cord." The crowd shifted. A retired nurse stepped up. "I'll assist," she said. Anna nodded. No panic, no bravado. Just movement, decision, action. She wasn't there for glory, she was there to keep people breathing. The dogs were fed first, not because she was sentimental, but because they were the rescue, and the rescue would continue. Scout limped. Buck, nearly deaf, lay against the radiator with his eyes half closed. Junie drank water in frantic gulps. Anna fed them with her own hands, then turned back to the gym and scanned the map. The rescue wasn't finished. Not even close. They'd gotten 15 people out. There were dozens more unaccounted for on the ridge, the outskirts, the frozen back roads that nobody else had mapped. She reached into her coat and unrolled a hand-drawn sketch. Every trail, shortcut, gully she had marked over the last 4 years. It was dirt-stained, creased, and more detailed than any document in City Hall. She laid it flat on the folding table. "Most of these people won't survive the night," she said quietly. The mayor, now standing beside her, cleared his throat. "Anna, but she didn't look up. "I'm not asking your permission." He swallowed. "I know." She pointed to 3 sections. "This road's blocked with fallen pine. There's a mother and 3 kids in a blue farmhouse here. This cabin, by the creek, 2 elderly. I need lanterns, dry boots, and more sled. Runners." She glanced to a young man nearby. "You, can you run fast in snow?" He nodded, startled. "Take Roscoe. He'll lead you through the pass. Whistle once if you see firelight, twice if you need backup." Roscoe lifted his head at his name. The boy looked terrified, but he reached for the harness anyway. "Don't pull him," she added. "He knows more than you do." By midnight, the rescue was no longer just Anna. It was the church kids hauling blankets. It was the retired firefighter fixing a broken sled, runner with wire from his truck. It was the cafe owner spooning stew into thermoses. It was the boy with the frostbitten fingers, carrying water jugs between cots like they were sacred. But still, Anna led. When someone panicked, she met their eyes and said only, "Breathe." When someone cried, she touched their shoulder and said, "You're not alone." When the mayor offered apologies, she walked away. Around 2 a.m., a small group returned with an elderly couple wrapped in old quilts. The woman was whispering hymns under her breath. The man had blood frozen in his beard. Anna helped lift them off the sled. "She couldn't walk," the volunteer whispered. They were huddled in the woodshed. Fire was long out. Anna didn't flinch. She took the woman's hand and said, "You're safe now." Then turned to the dogs. "Ready again?" Roscoe barked once. Just once, and the sled was loaded again. By 3:30, they'd brought in 37 souls, some barely breathing, some just scared. The snow began to lighten, not end, but soften. The wind settled. A nurse stood by the gym doors, staring out. "I don't understand," she murmured. How did she keep going? And the pastor, who hadn't spoken in hours, said quietly, "Some storms are quieter on the inside than the outside." Mayor Thompson finally approached Anna while she was wrapping a sprained ankle with strips of denim torn from her own coat. He removed his cap. His voice trembled. "Anna, I was wrong." She didn't look up. "I knew you were the one we should have turned to. I just didn't have the spine." Anna tightened the knot on the wrap, stood. "I didn't come for you." He nodded. "I know." A beat. Then she added, "But I'm not leaving anyone behind." She walked past him again, toward the map, toward the next name on the list. At dawn, the dogs lay curled in a pile near the fireplace. One of the teenagers covered them in old quilts. Anna sat nearby, eating from a tin of cold stew like it was. Nothing new, she hadn't slept, but her eyes were softer now. Not warm, but thawed. Children played nearby, some of them still wearing 2 left gloves. The nativity scene outside had been buried in snow, but now the angel's wings peeked above the drift, lit by a single shaft of morning light. A toddler approached, Anna gripping a crayon drawing of a dog. "This is yours," she said. Anna took the paper slowly. "It's Roscoe." He lifted his head at the sound. Anna smiled, not big, but enough. Enough to feel like something that had been frozen for years had moved again. She folded the paper and placed it in her coat pocket, the same one where Matthew's photo lived. Later that morning, while the town gathered in the church for coffee and counting heads, a man stood and said, "She's not a ghost, she didn't disappear. We let her go. And now," he faltered, "and now she came back anyway." Silence. Then someone added, "She didn't come back to be our savior. She came back because that's who she is." And when the tally was done, no one had died, not one. The snow stopped the way grief does, slowly, without announcement. By morning, Ashbury Ridge was buried in silence. Not the fearful kind from the night before, but something softer, earned, like a breath finally taken after being held too long. The sky turned a kind of blue that only comes after storms. Clean, cold, honest. In the shelter, no one spoke loudly. People moved like churchgoers on the morning after a funeral. Gentle, reverent, changed. Anna sat near the old stove, her hands wrapped around a chipped enamel mug. The dogs lay at her feet in a semicircle of fur and warmth. Roscoe's head rested on her boot, his eyes closed but his ears still twitching at every sound. The child who'd given her the drawing slept on a cot nearby, crayon still clutched in her fist. Anna didn't speak. She didn't need to. They all knew what had happened and what hadn't. Not a single person had been lost. Not a single soul buried under snow. No child gone silent in the dark, because she came, and because they followed. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat from the gym's entrance, his hat held low in both hands. "Folks," he began, "the roads are starting to open. Powers returning sector by sector. The fire chiefs coordinating with state crews. And..." He paused. "We've all got some rebuilding to do." He looked toward Anna, but she didn't meet his eyes. Instead, she reached down and ran a hand along Roscoe's side. The mayor swallowed. "We'll be holding a gathering in the town square at noon. Candle ceremony, moment of thanks." Another pause, another. "And if anyone deserves to speak, well..." He didn't finish the sentence, he didn't need to. By noon, the town was standing in the square, still bundled in coats, still tired, but alive. The Christmas tree was visible again, half lit, crooked but still standing. The church bells rang once, people placed candles in the snow. Some crossed themselves. Some just stood with their heads bowed. Anna arrived late. She didn't stand on the steps or near the tree. She stood at the edge, near the lamppost that had lost its wreath, watching quietly as people began to speak. The pastor thanked the responders. The nurse thanked the volunteers. A little girl held up a drawing of a sled. Roscoe sat beside Anna, tall and still, his coat catching the low sun like a gold flame. Finally, Mayor Thompson stepped forward. He cleared his throat, then raised his eyes to the crowd. "I said some things I didn't know I was saying," he began. "I believed things I didn't question, and when I saw someone fall, I didn't reach out. I looked away. That's on me." He turned slightly toward Anna. "I thought forgiveness was something you could request. But this week I learned it's something you have to witness." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. And it stayed, long after the mayor stepped down. Anna didn't move, but something in her did. Something subtle. A shift in posture. A softening in her jaw. She turned to go. That evening, she walked the snowy path back to Edgewood Hollow. The dogs trotted behind her, tired but proud. Her cabin came into view like a memory. Smoke curling from the chimney. Snow stacked on the roof. A soft yellow glow in the window. She climbed the porch slowly, opened the door, and stepped into warmth. Inside, she removed her coat and boots, lit a single oil lamp, poured a little water for the dogs, checked the fire. On the table lay a folded piece of paper. She hadn't left it there. She unfolded it. It was the drawing, the one of Roscoe. On the back, in a child's handwriting, "Thank you for coming back." She stood there for a long time, then opened the cabinet above the stove, took down a small, worn tin, opened it. Inside, a photo of Matthew, a lock of his hair, a dried daisy pressed between two pages of scripture. She placed the drawing beside it and closed the lid. That night, Anna stepped outside once more. The stars were clear above the pines. Roscoe followed, sitting beside her in the snow. She looked out at the hills, toward Ashbury Ridge. She didn't speak, but her breath moved like a prayer, not to a God she had forgotten, but to a world that had remembered her, and that was enough. Far above, a hawk passed across the moon. Not a sign, not a miracle, just a reminder. Some things return, not to be honored, but because they were never truly gone. Anna turns back toward the cabin. Roscoe stays for one moment longer, then follows. The door closes. The light inside stays on, not bright, but steady. Thanks for spending time with us today. If this story meant something to you, pass it on. This is Still Standing Souls. Real stories, quiet strength, lasting hope.